Hey everybody. So I decided to do one more video. It's something I wanted to get out there. I'm going to be planning on doing this soon. So I wanted to put just a little educational video out there on how to check valve lash in these engines as you're building them. You get ready to put it together, your head's all assembled, and you're getting ready to check valve lash. So I'm going to use the same engine that I just had in the previous video. There's no head gasket in it. I have two of the head bolts in it just to kind of hold it in place. So this isn't real world actual me setting the valve lash as a finished engine. This is just for educational purposes so you guys can see how to set valve lash on these engines. The only thing you're going to need is a 3/1000 feeler gauge. I have one that I bent the end of it just to make it a little easier access to get into where it needs to get into. And you're going to need a 10mm wrench and a 14mm wrench. That's all you're going to need to do this. So I'll grab the camera here, I'm going to face it down, and I'll kind of go through the steps on setting valve lash and kind of show you guys how that process goes. Alright, so what I usually do when I'm starting to do this, I'll take the engine, we'll pretend, for now we'll pretend this is assembled at the top end. What I'll do is I will run my adjustment nuts, which is your center nut right here, the bigger of the two nuts. I'll run it down just so it touches. It'll still wiggle, it'll touch that rocker ever so slightly. I'll do it on both sides. Both of these center nuts are your adjustment nuts for your lash. Your outer nut, the smaller black one right here, is your locking nut to hold it in place on where you want it. So first thing you're gonna do, or first thing I do, is I run these silver nuts down just so they touch the rockers on both sides. And then what I'll do is I will grab the pull cord. If you don't know where your engine is sitting, if it's sitting at top dead center, or if it's in the middle of a stroke, or anything like that, then what you can do is, if you watch these, you'll see the exhaust open, come back up, intake open, come back up. Now, you'll see your exhaust fluttered down just a hair, right there. I don't know if you guys seen that, but I'll do it one more time. There, it's all the way down, exhaust, intake all the way down. Okay, it's getting ready to flutter on this side. There it goes. So that is the point where you want to take your measurement. After that, they call it a compression release. You want to do it right after that compression release. So once you get to that point and you know that you're at top dead center, I can look down in the spark plug hole and see that the piston's at the top. You guys can't see it on the camera, but it is at the top. Let's do this. Maybe I can show you a visual here with this flathead. So the piston is now right there at the top. I can't go any further than that. I'm tapping the top of the piston. So the piston's at the top. These are kind of set down slightly loose. Now what I typically do after this is I'll take my feeler gauge and I'll stick it in here, in between the end of your rocker and your valve stem. And if it doesn't slide in there, like this one's not sliding in there. It's in there, the rocker's in there loose, but it's just not sliding in there easily. So what you want to do is you want to take your silver nut and back it out slightly. Now it'll slide in there freely. So as this is in here, what I'll do is I'll take this feeler gauge and kind of move it around a little bit in that area as I'm twisting this down. Right as I start feeling resistance on this feeler gauge in between the end of the rocker and the valve stem, I'll stop. And I'll take the black nut and go down till it touches the silver nut. Keep moving this back and forth with every stage that you do, because your dimensions could potentially change slightly. See right there, it came out and it's not wanting to go back in. So we'll back that out just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So now what you want to do, or what I do, I'll leave the feeler gauge in there after I have this set roughly where I think I want it. Take your 14, put it on your adjustment nut, and you take your 10 and you put it on your locking nut. So you want to try to hold your adjustment nut in place as best you can without moving it, and tighten down your locking nut. Now you're going to feel this try to push it, you're going to feel your adjustment nut try to push against your wrench. So you want to hold it in place and then tighten your locking nut. So now check it after the fact. So it's just a hair too tight. I can't quite get that out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this back up and try one more time. I'll go about 1/8 of a turn out, tighten it back up, and try again. Okay, still a little bit too tight. So let's try again. Okay. That's about 1/4 of a turn. And tighten up. There we go. All right, so the valve lash on this side is now set. You want to feel just a little bit of resistance with that feeler gauge in between there, between the end of the rocker and the end of the valve stem. That's underneath this rocker, which is what I have. I just got a very slight resistance. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that out. Now when you're done, you still wanna make sure that this is able to move, but this is still wobbly. If there's no wobble in that, you're either too tight or something is bound up. So we go in here, we check again, just to make sure the tolerance is where it needs to be. And we're good. Check it from a different angle just in case. And we're good. All right, so I'll go ahead and leave that valve where it's at, or that rocker where it's at. Now I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. I'm going to loosen these up a little bit just to make sure that's wobbly. I'll take my feeler gauge and stick it in here. Again, between the rocker tip and the valve stem tip. Now I want to twist this in until I start feeling a little bit of resistance. Okay. Take your 14, put it on your outside adjustment. And I'm going to go ahead and back this off about 1/8 of a turn. Just because I had to do it to the other side, I might as well do it to this side. Run this down. And tighten it up. Okay. So that is now stuck in there again. So we're going to go ahead and back it off. Run it out again. About another 1/8. Okay. Back it out another 1/8. Might be a hair too much, we'll see. If it is, we can always readjust. No, that's actually about perfect. Okay, so now we got a slight drag between the end of the rocker and the end of the valve. That's good. Okay, so we got a little bit of movement there. You want to have movement. Like I said, if you don't have any movement after you pull your feeler gauge out, something's bound up or you're too tight. So now what I typically do is I'll grab the pull cord and I'll cycle the engine over one cycle or two, depending on whatever you want to do. Okay, so that was actually 2 cycles. Now I'm back up after that, after this floated or fluttered, here I'll show you again. Okay, now it's gonna flutter. There you go. So now we know the compression release is there, or it's past that compression release. Now what I typically do is I'll take this feeler gauge and stick it back in. If I don't drop it, take this feeler gauge and stick it back in here, just to make sure nothing moved unexpectedly. So it's back in there, and we're good. We got slight drag on the intake, and let's see, exhaust is still good. Slight drag on the exhaust. Okay. All right, sorry my hand's in the way. All right, that's the quick and dirty version of how I set my valve lash. Some people will set one side to 3,000s, one side to 4,000s, 3,000s on intake, 4,000s on exhaust, or they'll do their own combination of things. I set mine to 3 on both sides. If I feel like I need to adjust it slightly, if I'm starting to hear some weird noises from the valve train or something like that, I'll go back in and do the adjustments. But I've had luck with 3,000s on both sides, and that's where I run them to start. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.